No. Hello. Hi, everyone. I had to change the stream link from the original announced stream. So, first of all, I'm a little disoriented. Second of all, I made the mistake of wanting to show you the pastries that I just brought home from Williamsburg. It includes honey cookies, which is a seasonal item and I love, and also two kinds of rugelach. This is the dairy version and this is the regular version, and my cats are obsessed with the dairy version. And this is halva. So hi everyone, my apologies about the stream mix-up. I wanted to do a little bit of a stream. I have not been really able to do a live in a long time, and so much has been going on. I wanted to fill you in on what I'm seeing for those who are interested in hearing what's going on in New York in such a tumultuous time. It's been an absolutely crazy 2 weeks. There were floods in Brooklyn. This is Chloe. Chloe is a thief, a food thief. There have been floods in Brooklyn. There was the holiday Sukkot, which was beautiful. I was in Israel, and I'm back now. And today, we have been told has been called as a day of Jihad. We should be extra careful. It's been really nerve-wracking. It's been a really hard week. So I wanted to update you a little bit on what's going on and what I am seeing. So first of all, hello to all of you. Thank you for coming on the stream. I did not get a chance to see everyone who's here. Many of your names I've gotten to know, your handles I've gotten to know, and I like seeing, getting a sense of who's watching and where you're from. So welcome to all of you. From the Caribbean, Tiffany, Jordy, and Amsterdam. Patty says oi, probably because my cat. Thank you, Krishna, so much. I would love to invite you also in the comments to ask questions. More so, if you have perspectives that you would like to share at this time, I would really, really appreciate hearing them. And I'm going to try to read them as we go along the stream. I don't plan to do the stream for very long. I do want to apologize for doing it on Friday on the eve of Shabbos. I'm also planning to go to services. It is not an opportune time for me, and I'm sure for many of you. The reason I am doing it now is because I'll be in Boston for next week. I'll be leaving Sunday morning, so don't really know what my opportunities will be with regards to checking in again. I also want to say that somehow I've developed a lot of stress around posting on my channel, and I really love to share with you so many things. There's so many toys, food, videos. I'm in the process of making some longer videos. I filmed the Catskills. I filmed Israel. For reasons out of my control, I don't expect any of these videos to go up in the next few weeks. And I'm finding that very stressful, knowing that my channel is probably not going to have any new content except interviews for a while. So I want to say that I'm still here. I'm still working on things. I'm always working on interviews with people, especially people from the community, which is a lot of work and often dead ends. So I want you to know that I'm working on that, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you some wonderful videos down the line. We'll see when that happens. I don't know when. So let's see. Sherry is in Milwaukee. So someone with a really hard to read username, one Luke Key, says, what do Satmar think about this conflict with a larger IP conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict? So that's what I want to talk about first. First of all, I want to tell you what I've been seeing in Williamsburg. I've been in Williamsburg and Bar Park over the last 3 days, every day. And today, especially, is very stressful in New York City altogether. I told my son to be extra careful. I'm worried in general about being in the city. I'm not generally a worrier, but there's a sense of the unknown and a higher sense of anxiety in general. But in Williamsburg, life as always goes on. Little children in the street. It's children coming and going. There's a sense of apartness from what's going on in the world generally. It's almost like the humdrum of life keeps going in this world apart. But once you stop people and you ask them, you hear people who are expressing tremendous worry and agitation. There was a man who runs the projects. The projects are a housing complex in Williamsburg that are low income. And this wonderful man, I've gotten to know him because I walk by that area a lot. He is the deputy administrator of a community service organization for people who live in the projects. And he's told me that there are many, many residents of the projects that are Holocaust survivors in their 80s and their 90s. Many of them live by themselves and therefore depend on community services organizations for having their meals, for having a sense of community. And he told me that these people are going through some terrible kind of reliving of trauma with what's going on, a sense not only of anxiety about the past and devastation about the tragedy in Israel, but also a reliving of anxiety about the future, but reliving their past as well. And I got the sense from him that there are a lot of people for whom what's going on in Israel and being all the way in New York, it kind of is creating a very, very painful evocation of hard memories. There was also someone else I spoke to who told me, I feel like this is just the beginning. I'm terrified of what's to come, which is I think what many of us worry about, what's next. In general, when you speak to people, you stop people in the community and say, what are you thinking? You'll hear anxiety. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing anxiety. I'm hearing expressions of grief. I'm hearing a kind of a oy 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 oy. This is actually, here is the newspaper, one of the newspapers. There are three. Interestingly, this is Die Zeitung, is not the Satmar newspaper. So the neighborhood I cover is Satmar majority, and Satmar is anti-Zionist, and this newspaper is not Satmar affiliated, so it's definitely going to not be officially anti-Zionist. So I want to take a minute and explain to you what I mean by anti-Zionist. The Satmar Rebbe is very well known to have been a very big voice against the state of Israel for a number of reasons. First of all, the state of Israel was established by Zionists. The Zionist movement was a secular movement. It was the movement of the new Jew, the invention of this new idea of a Jew who's no longer subjected to the whims of the host nation he lives in, but is a self-determined Jew who has his own army, who takes matters in his own hands. And this is the antithesis of how the Satmar Rebbe saw, first of all, God is in control at all times, but also this secular Zionist movement was something that a lot of Orthodox Jews were against before the Holocaust. And by the way, the Zionist movement well predates the Holocaust. And there's also, of course, another very important part of anti-Zionism for the Satmar sect is that there are three oaths that God made to the Jews, and one of them is that they should not return to the land before the time. And here, the time means the time of the Messiah who comes to redeem the Jewish people. And because the Messiah has not yet come, which we pray every day for the Messiah's arrival, therefore the Jews should not be a self-governed people yet. And the return of the land to the land as a self-governed people before the time is seen as an affront to God, and is a terrible violation of the oath. So the Satmar Rebbe was very, very much against Zionism, which is not to say that he was against the Jewish people who live in Israel, or against or that he was against Israel's. I will say, here's how I will say it: the Satmar Rebbe was not pro in any way hurting the wanting to be on the side. Okay, here's a better way how I'll frame it. You might have seen in the news that there are some Hasidic Jews who are pro-Palestine. That is not the approach of the Satmar sect. That is a fringe movement called Netir Karta. They are a tiny, tiny, tiny subgroup of Hasidic Jews. They have a very, very outsized presence in the secular world because they're so shocking and they're so visually striking to see Jews who look like Jews to be holding Palestinian flags. But that is not the Satmar approach. That is not what the Satmar Rebbe was preaching. It was about the right to be a self-governed people that he was against. If you have any thoughts about what I was saying, please share. Let me see what you're saying. I've seen some Jewish figures stating that this horrible attack was due to Zionism and or because there was a Buddha statue at the dance party near Gaza. What are most in Williamsburg saying? So I have not seen people say that the attack was because of a Buddha statue. I've not seen anything about a Buddha statue at all whatsoever. My cats are loving the dairy rugula. I think I'm going to let them enjoy it because I can't be chasing them. With regards to if the Zionists caused the attack because of if the attack happened because of Zionism, someone just sent me a clip that was very interesting, a lecture by a Satmar lecturer, Rabbi Hill Rosenberg. Thank you to the person who sent it. It was very interesting. It was a 30-minute lecture where he's explaining how Satmar Jews should respond to the current tragedy and to the war. And he says two things. I'm going to see if I can play a few seconds of it. Please let me know in the chat if you can hear it. So he's saying, what are you supposed to do about the tragedy? And he answers, all Jews are feeling empathy for the tragedy. That everyone is feeling the pain, and that is okay. So first he talks about that, and he's saying it's okay that you feel empathy to other Jews. Then he talks about the question of, are you supposed to be supporting the Zionist army? Are you supposed to be supporting a revenge operation? And in the process of explaining the Satmar response, what the Satmar viewpoint is in regards to the current situation, meaning what he has drawn out of studying the Satmar Rebbe's text should apply to the current situation. He speaks about how the agitation of the Zionist army, of the IDF, has caused hatred from the Arabs, hatred from Hamas. So it was really eye-opening to hear him say a lot of similar sentiments that I have heard from leftists who say the behavior of the IDF is what has sort of pushed to the current attack. I'm not making a personal statement here whatsoever. This is not reflect. I'm trying to explain what I'm hearing from this lecturer describe the Satmar approach. It is really eye-opening that such a conservative community, by studying their own text, should end up having very very, very similar philosophy to secular liberals who are in academic institutions studying very, very different source material. But I heard from him on numerous occasions alluding to the violence of the IDF causing hatred, which is inciting an animosity that is creating the dynamic in which attacks on Jews happen. So he was expressing a kind of a pacifism where it is necessary to be pacifistic in order not to excite anti-Semitism on Jews, and that the lack of pacifism from Israel is causing the opposite. It is stirring up hatred, and it is creating the stressors, the temperature, the hot sort of exploding dynamic. So he that was one part of his response. The other parts of his response were, you're not allowed to support the Israeli army, you're not allowed to be happy about the Israeli army's actions, and you are not allowed to cheer for any revenge or hope for revenge. And it was another point I want to make that was interesting listening to this lecture is he was talking about many Satmar Hasidim being so-called contaminated or being influenced by other sects. So I give tours in Williamsburg, where Satmar is the majority sect. I estimate about 60% of the population are Satmar Hasidim, but there are also other sects. There's the Visionist group, there's the Pupa group, and those groups generally are at the very least tepid in their anti-Zionism. I think they have a very different philosophy towards Israel. They might not serve in the army, but they have a completely different relationship with Israel, and he's warning against being influenced by these other sects which are in Williamsburg. So when I walk in Williamsburg, I am exposed to different Hasidic Jews who might be Satmar, and if they're Satmar, they would be more anti the government of Israel, and if they're from other groups, they might be more sympathetic to the government in Israel. Zelda says Reb Aaron Teitelbaum, who is one of the two Satmar leaders, there are now two Satmar subsects because of a schism that arose in about 2000 that split the Satmar sect in two. Reb Aaron is the older brother, and he's the leader of the sect that is centrally located in Kiryas Joel. And Zelda says he was even crying at the end of Yom Tov, at the end of the holiday. People are devastated. That's the thing. There's across Satmar or no Satmar, whatever Hasidic group it is, people are devastated by what happened in Israel, and people's sympathies are with the people in Israel. My parents, as far as I know, have never been to Israel. My father had made a promise to himself never to go to Israel because he's a very staunch Satmar Hasidic Jew. But the tragedies in Israel are very personally felt by everyone, I want to read some comments. PMF said, I stand for Israel and hope the war ends soon. Thank you. We can hear you, but can't hear the video. Okay, you couldn't hear the video. That's fine. I'm sorry. I wanted to play you some audio. I have a little more audio I was going to play you. Since you can't hear it, I won't play it. John Smith says, Satmar Rebbe was against Zionism, and he warned against such outcomes. Not that this is punishment per se, rather in a 1+1 manner. That is true. In this 30-minute clip I just listened to, there's a very similar connection between the climate of Jews as a self-governed people with their own government, with their own army, is setting the stage for fomenting anti-Semitism and hatred. Thank you all who say you stand with Israel. I really appreciate that. John Smith says that's besides the law. Diane says the footage of the little ones being held by these monsters, my heart is breaking. I am so angry. Courtney Ray says this argument is basically, look what you made me do. A lot of us feel that way when we hear leftists say it. Oh, Hamas acted the way they did because of Israel's oppression in Gaza. For me, it is really hard to hear that. I have a very hard time imagining anyone I know. It doesn't make sense to me that any circumstances should justify this kind of brutalizing innocent people. That's my own view. I don't feel like there's the blame should be on anyone except Hamas. It's such a horrifying situation. But of course, there is going to be a larger discussion about the geopolitical dynamics that are the setup for this situation. And obviously, there was a raging debate about this. Thank you for the question, Shayaba. With pro-Palestinian rallies going on, is there police coverage in Williamsburg? Is the community being protected in any way? That is a great question from Poland. Yes, I was in Williamsburg today. There was police presence everywhere, and something I've never seen before. There were police NYPD helicopters so low that I couldn't talk to my tour guests because it was so loud. And all the kids were like looking up and waving. From what I had read, it seemed that the NYPD had arranged with community organizers that the helicopters would circle the school parameters of where there are Hasidic schools to supervise during dismissal times, to keep those like an extra eye on those areas. I also saw police outside of the Grand Rabbi's house, and I saw a police presence outside of several synagogues, including the Satmar Street Synagogue. And the Veen sect's synagogue. So there are police officers everywhere, but there's also a police presence during the holidays. I didn't, besides for the helicopters, it wasn't anything extraordinary. Otherwise, life went on. People are preparing for Shabbos. Rabbi Smith had an excellent YouTube last night on the situation with great historic and Torah understanding. So Jimmy Johnstone says, interesting, I would like to find out what those Jews who don't want there to be a Jewish state have in mind as a location where Jews should have a home now, today. Where? So to this, I want to tell you that people in the community tell me that they feel like New York is a safer place than the Middle East, surrounded by non-Jewish Arab countries where they feel Jews are living in a much more precarious situation. Now, when you ask them, do you feel like Americans are going to protect you? What is the end goal? They will say, God protects me. This is what a woman told me. God protects me, not the Israelis, not the Arabs. God is the one who protects me. And wherever I go, there's no perfect place. I can't control anything. In the end of the day, God is the one who leads the world. So there's a very strong faith element that is at the core of the sense of we don't have to take matters in our own hands, except as self-defense. The interesting thing is, what is self-defense? The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is going to say they are self-defense. This lecturer I just listened to, Rabbi Hillel Rosenberg, he said that the difference between self-defense that the Hasidic community in New York does by organizing community patrol and the self-defense in Israel is, one is a self-defense of individuals and the other is a self-defense of a government. And this difference to him was a very, very enormous distinction. For those who have just come on, welcome. This is a live stream where we're discussing the situation in Israel and in New York in light of what's going on in Israel, especially in the New York Hasidic community. Diane says our local synagogue have a police car in the lots. Yeah, I can see there are. I've seen presence of police in many places, Jewish places of worship, not just in the Hasidic community. Anna says compliant Jews that vote blue no matter what created this mess. Carrie O'Rourke says, how can anyone seriously say that innocent people deserve this ungodly attack on women and children? No one is saying that. I want to be clear. No one is saying that there's anything deserved. And what everyone is saying in this community is that what happened was a terrible act of butchery, slaughtering, murdering that is vile, and the actors of this were Hamas. That's the story that is told in the community. But there is an additional narrative about Zionism, about the secular state of Israel, that makes connections between the violence in the Middle East, the pain and the tragedies that happen in the Middle East, and the Jewish state. I want to show you the Die Zeitung newspaper, which for the first time, as far as I have seen, is in red, and this is particularly because of the tragedy. It says Libi Libi al Khalalayim. It says the bloodiest murder in Israel with more than 1,200 victims, and then it says more than around 2,000 wounded, 150 Gefangene who have been obtained hostages in the terrible terror attack. And then inside in the newspaper, there is very, very little images, especially graphic images. Something I have been very struck by is so far on the Yiddish language media that I have been reading online, or like the virtual publication of Yiddish newspapers, or in the newspaper in print, I have seen very, very little of graphic visual images. It's making me think that in this population, you have very little, not only of sexualized images, but also very little of violent images. You look through the newspaper, there are very few images of people, and very careful censoring of images to exclude, of course, sex and sexually inappropriate, immodest images. But also, I've been thinking about in the last few days, very little violence, as far as I can tell. I think the children are not exposed really to graphic, violent images. If I look at the newspaper, or I think about the ways that the entertainment is distributed, even though the stories are very gory, there is a long history of pogroms and anti-Semitism, and of course the Holocaust, that is kept alive and very vividly remembered. I think the imagery associated with it, the imagery printed with it, is very conservatively on the side of not showing very graphic things altogether. SK says even American podcasters are saying, well, what did Israel think would happen? This is actually what I have been seeing a lot. I've been hearing a lot. My son is a student at Brooklyn Tech High School, which is supposed to be one of the top high schools in public high schools in New York City. And the students there are very engaged. They're all very involved with all the issues of the day. And they have all been saying, well, this is what happened because of Israeli abuses against Arabs, against Palestinians, against the residents of Gaza. So it's really interesting to hear anger at Israel coming from the left side, and then like my son's perspective, what he's hearing in school, and then hearing a pretty similar perspective from Satmar. It's really an interesting meeting of very different worlds. Greg and Tracy say, I'm so sorry this is happening. I'm just so sorry. My heart breaks for it all. Lil Willow Girl says, it's disgusting that Gaza genocide is trending on Twitter. I feel like so many are misinformed about the complexity of this situation. You know, I have become so uncomfortable with how easy it is to get simplistic narratives, having covered the Hasidic community and having seen how many shades of gray there are, and how hard it is to get people to understand that the story is complicated, and how many people get these short snippets, these very simplistic stories, and run with it. It's been such an education in how hard it is for the truth to reach people, for people to get a complicated understanding of a situation. And whenever I read the news, like whenever I see how people get so quickly caught up in a narrative. Oh, Hasidic Jews are for Palestinians. I'll hear that, and I'll think to myself, how can you say something like that? You're such a complicated story here with Hasidic Jews aching for their brethren. So many people have relatives. So many people have deja vu and trauma, and then there'll be one news story about the fringe Hasidic group Natira Karta, and it catches people's imaginations, and it becomes the singular story, and then it becomes so difficult to dismantle that simple story and put in its place a multifaceted story of some Hasidic Jews are fairly sympathetic to Zionism. Satmar Hasidic Jews are anti-Zionist but sympathetic to the Jews of Israel, and they're critical of the state of Israel. And there's the tiny Natira Karta that has been expressing sympathies, and they've been protesting for Palestinians holding up Palestinian flags. TLK says our local Jewish school felt it would be disrespectful to the victims to share or view their pictures. In addition, we don't want to cause any additional fear and anxiety. We need all the Amunah and hope. Amunah is faith. I appreciate that. Stephanie, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your words of encouragement. It has been such a hard week personally, going between the Hasidic community where I have such a complicated relationship and going between the secular world where I am navigating a place as a minority. You know, something that I experienced having been in the Hasidic community is a kind of cocooning from anti-Semitism. It was really after I left when I started to understand that not everyone is a Jew, and I stand in a demographic apart from the general public, that I started to feel anti-Semitism. I feel like I was very, very protected from a sense of being the other as a Jew. Like, the idea of being a Jewess is such an ancient term to me. It is the term of Gentiles speaking of the Jews. And then you when I left the community, when I left the Hasidic community, I started to hear those sentiments. And on my YouTube channel, it's even more so. In my whole life, I don't think I had ever felt uncomfortable about my nose. And people leave comments saying, wow, what a hell of a nose, like that. And it's like, I had no sense of myself as, who cares? I look the way I look. I was born the way I look. And then people make comments about you that make you aware of yourself as a person apart, as the other. And for me, for this week, it's been being in the Hasidic community is one kind of complicated for me, and being in the outside world is another kind of complicated for me. And all through all of this, I feel so deeply Jewish and so deeply connected to the Jewish people, for all its complexities and all the opinions everyone has, of course, and all the anxieties, the stresses that have been passed down to us in our bones. It's just scary. If you end up getting caught up in a kind of I feel a sense of heightened anxiety, kind of manifests in an inability to sleep properly, kind of thing. Let's see. Let me read some more of your comments. SK on the road says there's a border with Egypt. Tell to let people into their country. So this comment is in reference to the little Gaza Strip. Has a southern border with Egypt. A lot of people talk about how Israel has blockaded Gaza and has kept Gazans in an open air prison. We hear this expression all the time. But actually, Gaza also has a border with Egypt. Lil Willow Girl says people want soundbite, short clip, a catchy headline, and especially young people who think anyone anywhere is wronged, they go on the attack. This situation is deeply complex and most are too lazy to learn. Chrissy, thank you so much. This is why we need your insight. We need the education. I do think learning and discussing is extremely helpful. Peach Sangria says, yes, people are circulating videos of Natira Karta as if they understand what that's about. It is so, so unfortunate. I think Hasidic Jews are so angry at Natira Karta, not because people personally care if a few fringe elements of the community hold views that seem so fine. You want to, they're considered crazy, they're considered extreme. Every single person that I talk to thinks that that they're crazy. That's what I hear. There's a couple of people that are crazy, but the problem is that they have such a powerful effect on the outside public, getting an impression that they represent Hasidic Jews, that they represent Orthodox Jews, but they're just a couple of people who hold up flags and show up in the media, and they show up in Manhattan, and this makes their presence so hard to, it just is very, very visually permeating. Linda says, I'm praying for all the innocent people on both sides. I pray for Israel and the Jews all over the world. Milo says, Rome should have never abandoned Jerusalem to the Mujahideen. When the West left Jerusalem, civilization left with it. Rome needs to call for a defense of its parents, the Jews. Luis says, I'm so sorry for changing the subject, but are your cats arguing? My cats like to play. They are two female cats that love each other. They sleep curled up in each other, and they hunt for food together. They are very, very big troublemakers. I threw out one of the rugelach because they were really having a feast, but they also like to play, and it involves standing on their hind legs and going at each other with their paws. Julian Cohen says, a lot of OTD people, which is people who have left Orthodoxy, or OTD means off the path, off the halachic or Orthodox faith path. She says a lot of OTD people have a similar experience with regards to anti-Semitism. That's actually very interesting to hear. And it's also very unfortunate. It is a real shock. It is a real shock, and it is very painful because, to be completely honest, it can feel like there's a lot of pain coming from the Jewish community, and then there's a lot of pain coming from the Gentile community. And altogether, it kind of it is a really hard place to find yourself in. I personally feel like I'm a Jewish person. I love my Orthodox brethren. I support their religious life, which is beautiful in many, many ways. And I also I love all Jewish people. My favorite thing about Israel is that all sorts of Jews live together, coexist. It is so beautiful. I feel like I walk around Jerusalem, tears in my eyes, seeing different kinds of Jews, everyone getting along. But if you're ex-Orthodox, you carry a kind of, I do anyway, kind of a guilt, kind of a pain. And when there is an anti-Semitic attack, I think that pain translates in a very particular flavor. Gun says, glad you are safe. I know a group in Jerusalem that teaches self-defense and are excellent. They all have been mobilized. No one has the right to massacre innocent civilians. Hamas are terrorists. No one should make excuses. Hannah Williams says, I hate that it seems you have to be one side or another, and so people saying Israel or Palestine won't move, rather than saying what's happening is awful and abhorrent, but also Palestine suffers too. It is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate because an, something that a part of what's unfortunate is ultimately we don't want civilians to suffer, and by making it so black and white, it just divides people in a way that when we see suffering, it makes people dig in even more. It makes people feel even more sympathetic to one side and not the other. uh I I'm heartbroken by what's happened, and yet at the same time I kick myself for having spent so much time on Twitter, because everyone has such a black and white view there. It's like you're on this side or you're on the other, and everyone is so nasty to each other in the process of expressing those views. I do find that in real life people are tread a little more gently, letting there be room for everyone to have maybe a little more gray perspectives. um Malky says, I'm Satmar and I live in Williamsburg. We all pray for the safety of the soldiers. I have a friend who is a Baal Tshuva and is in the army. I don't agree with that, but I love her and pray for her safety. Malky, I so appreciate what you are saying. I really, really appreciate your comment. Kathy says, this Gentile is keeping you and Israel in her thoughts and prayers. I admire the courage and strength of all Jews praying for shalom. Julian says Twitter is terrible for your mental health, especially during this time. Really, anytime there's a news story that breaks, when tempers are flaring and everyone is very excited, I feel like being on Twitter and getting caught up in that whirlwind is so bad. It doesn't give you a chance to breathe, to find your bearings. I usually refrain. I'm very good at saying I'm just not going to look, but I couldn't resist. I was in Israel until pretty much when it happened. And my time in Israel was so peaceful that when I spoke to people in Israel, and I asked them about things I've been always curious about: the Jews of Israel, the Orthodox Jews, the Haredi Jews, the secular Jews. It didn't even occur to me to ask some questions about views towards Palestine, because there's been so many other things on my mind, and there was a sense of peacefulness, kind of a carefreeness. There was a holiday, there were sukkahs everywhere, everyone is coming and going, dancing groups in the streets. It was so charming. It was lovely. I also visited the Hasidic enclave Mei Sharim, which is probably the most insular. It's a beautifully ancient enclave. And I also visited Bnei Brak, which is close to Tel Aviv. Mei Sharim is in Jerusalem. And I don't know, it was simple. It was simple. It was without the stressors of it. It was almost like life felt so easy. Linda says, thank you. I watched your interview the other day with a person you met while in Israel. My heart just goes out to everyone. The person I met in Israel is Eli Benedict. He showed me around his home, where he grew up, some places he played as a child. He even showed me the place he got married. He's not in the community anymore, which is why he has the opportunity to do that. You know, people in the community kind of are expected to not bring attention. It's complicated for people in the community. Very few people will feel comfortable showing me their lives. So very often I talk to people who have left, who have sort of the liberty to introduce me into their world. So that was Eli Benedict. He's wonderful. And I do want to tell you that I have more stuff coming with him, the tour, and also hopefully an interview where he tells his story. Wow. I'm just going to say to Slick Glenfrida, you look Czech. I want to say that my mother was born in Czechoslovakia. So I don't know. Um, thank you so much, Louise. I want to wrap this up because it's soon going to be Shabbos and I need to call my mom and I need to set the table and I'm planning to go for services. I do hope to keep you all posted of what's going on. Maybe I'll post comments on the community tab on my YouTube channel. So there's a tab for community. It's posts of pictures or text. I sometimes post there. I know a lot of people don't see it, so you can check there. If I see news, I might update there. I'm just keeping an eye, trying to understand what's going on with different segments of the Hasidic Jewish community, trying to put the story together, trying to share the story with you in a way that is accurate. I hope that what you took away from my telling today is that the Hasidic community is feeling a lot of sympathy, a lot of heartbreak. They are very much feeling the pain of the people of Israel. The Satmar sect, in particular, there are different complicated perspectives. I think the perspective that is in line with the Satmar Rebbe, Reb Joel Teitelbaum, who's very staunchly anti-Zionist, is to not be supportive of the army. But as you saw from one of the comments I read to you, people feel sympathetic, support, pray for people in the army. So there's definitely a lot of nuances in the feelings, even within Satmar towards Israel. In fact, I will say that my personal firsthand experience with Satmar Hasidim is very many of them, especially the younger generation, feel a great affinity to Israel, even if you're not supposed to, even if you're officially they're anti-Zionist. There's still very deep bond to Israel. And the last thing that I hope that you've taken away is that the community itself, there's a heightened sense of anxiety and there's more security, and the community is kind of holding its breath, hoping that um, everything, that nothing terrible, that everything stays safe and well, as we say, shulam b'shalva, that may there be peace everywhere. So thank you all for coming on this stream. Please leave your comments with your thoughts. If you want to add to what I was sharing, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for more videos in the future. Good Shabbos to all of you. Um, good Shabbos to Louise and Hannah and Rebecca. And yes, I'm praying for peace. I'm praying for all of us. And I really appreciate all of your kind words.